welcome to another episode of the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition's Small Business Forum. I'm your host, David Dadekian, a small business owner here in Rhode Island. I own Eat, Drink, Rhode Island. And with us today is State Representative David Morales, who's also running for mayor of Providence this year. Welcome, David.
Thank you so much for the introduction, David. So excited to be here with y'all.
It's great to have you. We appreciate it. We'll be linking up your website and all that information down below in the show notes and everything. But why don't you start by just telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background?
Absolutely. So my name is David Morales, he, him, and I represent the Mount Pleasant Valley and Elmhurst neighborhoods within Providence over at the State House as a legislator and have done so for the last 6 years. And now I'm running for mayor of Providence on a platform centered around affordability, protecting our immigrant community, and investing in our public education system.
Fantastic. You got it. You got the pitch down. That was quick and easy. I think it was less than 30 seconds even. Wow, that was very tight. All right. So let's dive in. Background wise, do you have a business background? Where's your background, career wise? Because I know you are a state representative, but it's a part-time legislature, so you have other work.
Yeah. So generally speaking, my background has been centered around education. So immediately following graduate school, my first job was serving as a behavioral specialist at a local middle school, which I will tell you right now, without question, the most hectic job I have had, especially again, when we're working with our 10, 11, 12-year-olds and supporting them socially and emotionally. Thereafter, I spent some time working with a workforce training program called Year Up Rhode Island. And I had the opportunity to work directly with young adults who wanted to pursue a career centered around business or IT. And then thereafter, I worked in admissions with Roger Williams University. And most recently, before running for mayor, I was working at the Woonasquatucket River Watershed Council as the director of community programs, where I got to lead on initiatives centered around adult education.
Fantastic. Well, certainly that area, I know that area well, and there's lots of small businesses in that area, lots of good restaurants that I deal with. In fact, I think I just saw you post this morning one over there on Valley Street.
What was that? So Spice Valley Halal.
yeah, that was it. It was the butter chicken pizza. That's right. I was like, I haven't had that one. I got to go try that. So, but I don't want to get too sidetracked into Eat, Drink, RI. That's my world. Let's stick with your world. I know you've sent us some information in email, so we've seen some of the things you have thoughts on for small business. Let's talk about those proposals there. What are you thinking about with this storefront improvement?
Well, first off, we need to further activate our commercial corridors.
Yeah.
When we think about Chalkstone Avenue, Broad Street, Branch Avenue, Cranston Street, the list goes on. So many of our neighborhoods are home to commercial corridors driven by small businesses. Therefore, I believe it is incumbent on the city to be proactive and start reaching out to some of our local small business owners who have called Providence home for years and decades and asking them, how can we further support? And some of what I have heard, even before I was on the campaign trail, but during my time as a state legislator, is support when it comes to storefront improvements. Because visibility makes a difference. When a business gets renovated and it becomes attractive to the eye, as one is driving by, as one is walking, as one is taking RIPTA, it calls your attention. I always make a reference over to what we see on Hope Street. On Hope Street, it is a very much walkable neighborhood. You compare that in addition to the amount of trash bins that you can find in almost every other corner. They have a Hope Street Merchants Association that is fully activated, that has helped when it comes to crowdsourcing for storefront improvements, and the work speaks for itself because it is a high traffic area for local residents, in addition to tourists who are coming by and visiting Providence for the first time. And I believe very firmly that we can do the same thing across Smith Street, across Chalkstone Avenue. And by being able to have a matching funds program through the city of Providence, we can now provide further opportunity for there to be renovations and fixes and improvements around signage. And that's going to go such a long way to further activate these corridors.
Excellent point. Well, you sort of touched on some things also we talk about a lot on this show is infrastructure. And it's not always the most exciting topic, but it's extraordinarily important to small businesses, paving, sidewalks, the whole thing. I mean, you mentioned trash bins. Obviously, we had a very difficult winter. Obviously it's very difficult to plan for something as much as snow as we receive, but you could say that, the system could be improved. What's your thoughts on infrastructure? Where do you see that going?
Well, one, we need to make sure our neighborhoods and commercial corridors are walkable. and that starts making necessary improvements. So anyone, regardless of physical ability or disability, is able to safely walk through the streets. The same goes when it comes to our bus stops. I find it shameful that many of the bus stops do not have any benches nor any overhead canopy for one to be able to wait for their bus with dignity. And instead, people are expected to just wait around, stand around, and that leads to certain levels of soliciting that happens. And so what I've heard a lot from small business owners is the local infrastructure makes all the difference. It makes a difference on whether it's walkable, but also whether it's even drivable as well.
Yeah.
This past week and a half, I've been hearing from many small business owners across Olneyville Square about the craters that are existing right now when one tries to go through different parts of Manton Avenue, through Olneyville Square, and just how challenging it's been because clients, neighbors are avoiding these streets on purpose because they don't want to have to deal with those potholes. And so if that means going through different streets and that adds to their commute or it adds to additional time to get home, they will make that happen because, again, they don't want to have to deal with that stress of their car potentially getting damaged. And all of that goes into the foot traffic and ultimately whether or not someone goes into that respective business. All of this is connected.
Oh, that's excellent points. So, you mentioned the bus stops and things of that nature. You've been in the House, State House, as a representative for 6 years now, like you said. I know RIPTA was a big issue. You can't control it as much as mayor, but where did you see your votes going in terms of the State House, and what do you think you can do, maybe even before the session is over?
I mean, the priority has to be making sure we maintain the basic services that exist, and that's in reference to RIPTA. Right now, we have watched as there was a record level amount of cuts that happened this past fiscal year. And we've seen a reduction in bus lines that are now serving working people within our communities, the way that it's impacted students trying to get to school on time. So at the bare minimum, we need to preserve the current system as it exists. In terms of other issues and topics at hand, we know we're in a healthcare crisis. One of my main priorities within this year's state budget is making sure that we improve reimbursement rates across the board for primary care providers. We are in a situation where we have far too many primary care providers who are choosing to either retire early or are shifting their practice to Connecticut or Massachusetts because it's so much more competitive over there. And when you think about the growing need that we have within our communities, we need to guarantee that anyone who has to go to the hospital, has to go to the doctor's office, is able to do so in a timely manner without the stress that there's not going to be a medical professional available. And most recently, we just secured an $18 million loan allocation to Centurion, which is going to be the nonprofit that now will be managing Roger Williams and Fatima Hospital. And that in of itself is very important. What I want to make sure of now in the legislature is that we are monitoring how that funding is being used, because it's not enough to simply write a check and ensure that the bills are being paid. We need to make sure that safe staffing levels are implemented. We need to guarantee that everyone, regardless of the language they speak, regardless of physical disability, is able to get the services that they need.
Yeah, I mean, oversight is extremely important. So we talked about infrastructure. We talked about the improvements you talked about. Let's talk about taxes a bit, because I know that is something that's always been an issue for the Small Business Coalition members. That is, we'll also talk about utilities, because that's also one of the top things that the coalition talks about. But let's start with the taxes first. The Smiley administration has brought the corporate tax down. It has had some improvements there. What do you think about it from a small business standpoint, and from a bigger picture for the city standpoint?
I believe we need a two-tier commercial tax system. I'm glad that our small businesses have seen a reduction around the commercial tax rate from what was once 3.5%, some of the highest in the region, to now being reduced to 2.8%. My issue, however, is the fact that some of the corporate polluters that are out-of-state entities that are harming our neighbors in South Providence also benefited, and if not, at a disproportionately higher rate than some of our small businesses. You saw many of the corporate polluters now paying anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000 less in their annual taxes. Whereas some of our small businesses, and again, those who I've spoken to between Branch Avenue, between Chalkstone, saw that because their assessment value had gone up, even though the tax rate had been reduced, they're still paying roughly the same amount in their taxes this past year. And so there's something to be said about making sure that we keep our current commercial tax code at that 2.8% stable for our small businesses, but to have a different expectation for those that can contribute so much more. And that is the industrial facilities operating near the Port of Providence.
Well, there's certainly a lot of them there. I mean, we've certainly seen stories. It's it's an environmental justice issue at many levels. Especially with the communities that are over there. And there's a lot of good small businesses over there as well. And obviously, Broad Street is a hub for that area. Allen's Avenue is a hub for that area. Lots of good businesses down both those corridors. So that's a very, very good point to bring up.
I'm glad you bring that up, David, because I just wanted to also mention, like, even the distinction between business models. A scrapyard on Allen's Avenue has such a different operational model than a bodega over on Broad Street.
Oh, yeah.
And so I find it, again, very strange that they're being assessed and that they're being taxed within the same structure. And for that reason, I think it's incumbent on us within the city to start making some of those changes. And I will note that last year in the state legislature, we did approve legislation that now allows Providence to adopt this two-tier commercial tax system.
Yeah. Very interesting. Thank you. All right. So I mentioned utilities. Let's talk about utilities. I know that's more of a statewide issue than really a Providence mayor issue, but what are your thoughts there? What it really is, as we're doing our winter poll right now with our members, and we've got events going on, and a lot of our members come up to us and say, yeah, energy rates, that's really what's killing us.
It's outrageous. We have some of the highest utility rates in the country. We also allow for Rhode Island Energy to collect a profit margin of over 10%. Before Rhode Island Energy was the acting utility monopoly, we had National Grid. The rates within National Grid were lower than what we're seeing right now within Rhode Island Energy. One of the reasons for that is because their profit margin at that point in time was only 6%. Now, through some of the regulations that have been adopted by the Public Utilities Commission, Rhode Island Energy has been almost to double their profit margin in terms of what's allowable. I believe that is wrong. And so for the third consecutive year, I am co-sponsoring legislation alongside Representative Megan Cotter out in Exeter. Because again, it does not matter whether one lives in a rural community or in the urban core. We are getting crushed by these utility costs. And by being able to cap the profit margin, we will guarantee that our neighbors have access to more affordable utilities between electricity and gas.
All right. Okay. That's really interesting, to think about at the state level with the legislature. I hope that gets passed. That sounds like it's got a lot of potential to it. So, all right, let's talk about that for a second. You've been at the state level. You're doing some good work. It sounds like. I know some of the other bills that you've passed over the years. You've been part of. I've seen some of your speeches. You certainly are trying to work hard for the people in the communities that you represent, Mount Pleasant and Elmhurst, and that helps impact, like you said, different parts of the state, like with Exeter. Why mayor? Why do you think you want to move from the state legislature to a city?
Because we have far too many of our neighbors that are struggling and are just being priced out and are now unable to call Providence home. In the last 6 years that I've been a state legislator, the most common phone call that I get is about a neighbor that has just watched their rent skyrocket and is now questioning whether or not they continue being able to afford living in Providence or whether they have to make their way over to Woonsocket, West Warwick, or Pawtucket, because those are the more affordable alternatives. And I think we need to address the rental crisis before us and be able to limit annual rent increases at 4% a year. I also think we need to reimagine what housing can look like in our city. The city should be purchasing vacant lots that do exist across our city, vacant lots and underutilized properties for the purposes of developing mixed income housing that can also be mixed use. There's so much opportunity that exists within the city's budget in the ways that we can further invest in our public education system. It's shameful that we have only one counselor for some of our elementary schools that serve over 400 students. And then we start questioning why academic achievement is not improving. Much of this has to do with the lack of staffing that exists across the board. And over the years, I believe that there's been a lack of urgency around these key issues related to housing, related to education, and even being able to build and expand upon our creative economy. We are the creative capital and we have to own that. We cannot just have a celebration once a year during the weekend of the summer. We have to further activate our commercial corridors. I see Smith Street as one of the anchors to help us achieve that, because during the St. Patrick's Day parade, you get to see what an activated Smith Street corridor can and should look like more regularly throughout the year. And the mayor's office is the office to help facilitate and make that happen.
Very true. Very true. So, I mean, you talk about those types of corridors. They're also very much impacted by tourism and travel, which Providence is a destination for many people. How do you see that role as mayor?
The ambassador of the city, making
Yeah,
sure that we are drawing more community from outside of Rhode Island to come and explore Providence. And that looks like making sure we're uplifting our local artists, visual artists, performing artists. You look at AS220, you look at some of the DIY concert spaces that exist. And of course, we have Trinity Rep and so many of the other institutions that have been here for decades. And a large part of this as well is being able to further own that we are a food scene. We
yeah.
are a hub of being able to draw culinary, diverse, delicious food all within one sector. The question now is, how are we helping to facilitate that? Imagine if we had shuttles, though. I often go back to this. Imagine if we had shuttles, circulator bus systems that were designed to take you to different parts of the city. Without this expectation, you always have to go straight into Kennedy Plaza. We had a circulator bus system in place. We can help guide, again, some of our neighbors who already call Providence home, in addition to those visiting, to be able to get exposed to the West End, get exposed to the south side of Providence, and of course, right into downtown. And when we do that, that's how we stimulate local business. That's how we allow for some of our small businesses to now be able to expand. Because we've seen some of these success stories. You look at Mi Ranchito, that is then evolved into Dolores. And now they're not just operating on the east side, they're also operating within Track 15. That's what we should be seeing more of, because they hire locally. They prioritize a local workforce.
Yes, I hate to correct you, but it was El Rancho Grande that turned into Dolores.
Woo, yes, thank you.
Sorry, it's my world. I can't. And the Mendez family are very good friends of mine, so I just had to jump in there. But no, I mean, that's excellent points. Thank you for that. But all right, so let's talk about, before we go, permits, licenses, things of that nature. Where do you see that for small businesses? That's obviously one of those things that, not very exciting, but extraordinarily important and crucial.
Well, it's a question of accessibility. How are we communicating with our small business owners? I was shown by a small business owner what a permit renewal looked like for their restaurant. And it was an email that literally looked like a scam, but it was technically an official email from the city. And I found it shameful that that was the only form of communication and outreach that went out to them. We have to remember, we have access to a lot of this information in terms of how to contact someone, whether it is through their direct phone number, whether it is their email, whether it's a mailing address, but also the fact that we, as the city, have the resources through the means of human capital to actually connect with people directly. In other words, I want to see a network of small business ambassadors within different neighborhoods that are checking in with our small businesses, specifically during the start of the fall. That way they know that they are ready to go when it comes time to renew their liquor license. Because we see what happens during the months of December and January. We see a lot of our small businesses have to close shop. Some of them were not ready to renew their liquor license. They did not take the proper steps to engage with the Division of Taxation so they were in good standing. And a lot of this is not necessarily the fault of the respective small business owner. There is so much that one has to take into consideration, whether it's meeting payroll, thinking of new marketing ideas. These are the ways that the city should be able to come in and support. And that's permit renewals. That's about streamlining the process and also encouraging activation of spaces. I noted it earlier. When we look at Smith Street, we see how joyful the street looks like during St. Patrick's Day weekend. We can have more of that if we are having an active effort to reach out to some of our small businesses like Capitol Hill Taqueria, like Baba's Original New York system that's now under new ownership. When you think about Paris, there are ways that we can say we want to be able to do outdoor dining. We want to have a safe environment for everyone. We want to make sure the streets are clean thereafter. It just requires facilitation from the city to help make that happen. And if we have a network of small business ambassadors, that can go a very long way.
Interesting idea. Thank you. So we're almost out of time here. What anything that we didn't bring up that you wanted to mention? Anything to wrap up?
I just want to further reiterate, when we activate public spaces, we are helping to stimulate our local economy. And one of the ways that we can help ensure that that happens is guaranteeing that we don't allow for the status quo of vacant storefronts. I get very frustrated walking through downtown and seeing a vacant storefront, knowing that that can make for an amazing art gallery if we allowed a local entrepreneur, local artist to be able to have access to a discounted lease. We start thinking about Providence Place Mall. Right now, there's currently a vacancy with what used to be the Dunkin' Donuts in Providence Place Mall. If I was the mayor, I would already be in contact. Even though they're under receivership, I would start being in contact with some of the contracting managers to ask, how can we place some of our small businesses and give them an opportunity to occupy that space. I say all this because we cannot allow our imagination to be limited when it comes to stimulating our local economy and creating joyful spaces, because we all want to continue being able to call Providence home.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. This has been a great conversation. As I mentioned at the beginning, we'll be linking up all the information down below. The primary for Mayor of Providence is Tuesday, September 8th. So make sure you're registered to vote. And I'm sure you'll be hearing more from Representative Morales over the next few months as we approach that primary. State Representative David Morales, thank you very much for your time.
It's been a pleasure, David. Take care.
You too. All right. Thanks again for watching or listening on your favorite podcast system. Please like, subscribe, leave a rating, all those things you're supposed to do. But really, we appreciate everyone checking out the Small Business Forum. And until next time, thank you for watching and take care.